Yeah, hello everyone. Thanks for joining. So in this session, right? So we are going to see implementing continuous deployment using Azure pipelines. So in previous session, so we are just seeing how we can configure the release pipeline using Visual Classical Editor. So that is the GUI based way. So there is some drag and drop, right? So with that we can created the release pipeline. But in this one, right, so we are going to see how we can create the release pipeline using the YAML pipeline. So you know already, like there are two ways of creating pipeline. One is through GUI based the classical editor, that is the visual designer, and another one is YAML pipeline. So in this session we are going to see how we can create the release pipeline using YAML pipeline, and also we are going to see some overview of service connections, service hook, and notifications. So those things also we are going to cover it today. So let's see the agenda. So the first one, so the overview of the Azure release pipeline, and the next one, the provisioning and configuring target environment, the basic stuff. And the next one, we are going to see so how to create the service connections. And so the next one, manage and modularize task and templates. Okay, so maybe when we are having some of the common logics, so that we are using in multiple release and build pipeline means, so how we can modularize the task and then we can leverage the same in all the other pipelines. So that one. And then the what is the requirement for testing part, so in the CD. So once the application is built and released to the deployment environment, and what are all the verification we have to check as part of the continuous delivery process. So that one also we are going to see. And then the some general aspect of the automated inspection, maybe once we have deployed, right, so we don't know whether the application is up and running. So maybe there is some problem, like from the application to database connectivity maybe not happening. So that those kind of issues maybe we can verify using the health inspection. So that one. And then the service hooks, maybe when you are so when the particular event happens in your system, so if you want to trigger maybe some other tools, right, so at the time we have to use service hooks. So for example, the only one thing is Jenkins. So you have the repository in Azure repos, and you are managing the build pipeline, everything in the Jenkins. Okay, so in this scenario, whenever you are pushing the code, so the particular webhook needs to be called the Jenkins job, so that the Jenkins will run the build job and all. So that is the basic concept. So similar, like there are many things, like when the particular event is happened, so it has to push the message to Slack or Teams channel. So these are all some kind of scenario there, so that we can discuss. And then finally we are going to see Azure release pipeline using YAML file. Okay, so in the last session we have deployed a .NET Core application from that Visual Designer release pipeline. So in this time we are going to deploy from the YAML pipeline. So what are all the configuration we need to make, and which file we need to edit. So those kind of things we are going to see. Okay, so let's get into the session. Okay, so the first one is the overview. Okay, so maybe you will already know, what is the continuous delivery. Okay, so for example, all the tasks from build, testing, and artifact staging and deployment to all the environment, it has to happen automatically. So which means the staged build and then the verified, right, so everything has verified. And maybe when the production under, by just maybe just a single click, it has to deploy to the production environment. Okay, so maybe from that release, maybe the continuous delivery pipeline, right, so which will come from it will download the artifact from that build pipeline, and after that it will copy or deploy the artifact to the target environment. So the target environment, it can be anything, like maybe the Kubernetes cluster, or maybe IaaS server or Tomcat. So it can be anything. So it is based on the technologies we are using. Okay. And then finally, once that is deployed, right, we need to make sure like the deployment is successful, maybe there is no broken, so anything we have to verify, right? So that's why we are running some kind of maybe automated testing, and the security maybe after the deployment, right? So that is exposing HTTP endpoint, so that we have to verify is there any maybe the security vulnerabilities are there. So is there any attacks possible by the hackers? So those kind of checks we are just ensuring by using some kind of security scanning tools. Okay. So generally, right, so for example, the release pipeline, so comprising of the many jobs, actually release job. Okay. So you already know like so how the one pipeline is organized, it can be like build or release. Okay. So first one is stages. Okay. The grouping of stages, it would be like pipeline. Okay. So under the stages there are many jobs. Okay. And then so under the job we will be having many maybe the script task or normal task and all will be there. Okay. So basically, right, so the release job means the execution of steps, so which means like downloading the artifact, that is the one step, and another one is uh, another one is like copying the artifact from maybe our artifact artifact repository to the deployment environment. So that is the one step, another one step. Okay. So the execution steps, right, it will be differ based on the maybe the deployment platform or the technology also. Okay. So for example, maybe if I am just deploying the .NET application, okay, I just need the zip artifact and then I'm going to copy. So in case that is the app service. Okay. So in case of maybe in the same application, right, maybe in the same source code, okay, same source code project, you are combining all the source code and then the infrastructure provisioning code, and maybe the in the source code, right, maybe you are having the backend SQL and then front end also. So in this scenario, right, there are four types of code within the same project. Like one is infrastructure, like creating the cloud resources, and next one is maybe the database related thing, the schema we want to deploy those things, and the next one is the .NET application, which is the backend for our application, and then the last one is the front end application. Okay. So which means like there are four kind of technologies involved here, so that maybe based on the maybe sequence we have to run by one. So for example, the first priority, the first sequence would be like the installing the maybe deploying the infrastructure, and next one is deploying the schema changes in the database, and next one is copying the artifact. Maybe the first one is the back and the deploying .NET application, and then the next one, the last one is like deploying front-end application. Okay. So the sequence would be changed based on our the technology. So maybe at the time, yeah, you will know so which one has to come first and then second something. Okay. And then the maybe the so we know like the maybe all the steps, right, it will be running on any one of the agent machine. So it could be like Microsoft hosted agent machine, or it could be the self-hosted agent machine, so that we already discussed many times, so you know, you are aware of it. Okay. And then the next one is whether you are going to create a script, maybe all the actions, right, like copying the scripts means you can use a SSH copy or some kind of FTP commands. So whether you are going to make a own script or you are going to use the specific task from marketplace. Okay. So for example, as like other CI tool like the Azure DevOps and Jenkins, Bamboo, right? So all the tools, they are having the marketplace. So there you can find all kind of the task actually. So which actually it will help us to makes our job easier. So you don't need to write a own script for all the actions. You can just call the you can just maybe copy the particular task, so that maybe all the other, maybe you just want to provide parameters only. So what the that is the reusable task, you just want to provide parameters, and underlying logic and all, it will execute it. So it will have the script already written, so we just need to pass the parameters. Okay, so mostly, right, for all the tasks, for like a Kubernetes, Helm chart, the maybe even the red gate also, but I'm not sure. But there will be the market task, maybe the task will be in marketplace, maybe, but we need to provide all the functional logic, but the calling, the interaction with the maybe the destination server, right, maybe like copying, downloading, and so those kind of operation, it will be abstracted in that particular task. So we can leverage that one, so that we don't need to waste much time on creating own scripts. Okay, and then the next one is the reusable. Okay, so for example, in every maybe the technology language, right, so maybe if we are duplicating something, so it will maybe we cannot maintain the standard, and as well as maybe it will take lot of time also. So if every time we are creating the same logic again and again, maybe that's not good, maybe in terms of maybe effective, right? So in this scenario, even as like other tools, even Azure DevOps also providing the task groups, variable groups. Okay, so the task group is like, for example, you are having the maybe the group set of tasks, so that you are using in almost all the pipelines. Okay, so for example, you are having the .NET API application. For example, 10 API application you are having. Okay, for all the API application, right, the steps would be common. Like you maybe the deploying step would be common. You have to download the artifact, and then you have to copy to the Azure app service. So that step is common, right? So we don't want to maybe the have the same task in multiple places. Okay, so for example, if there is some changes we are going to make in the particular task, okay, which means like we have to modify everything in all the 10 places. Maybe again, we are not sure, some place maybe we forget to update, so there are some chances for failure and all, right? So that's why, so if you are having the task groups and maybe the variable groups, you can reuse those sections across the multiple build and release pipeline. And in sometimes, right, you want to update some reusable function also. Okay, so that you can just update in a one place, so wherever the particular task group is referring, so it will be automatically reflected automatically. Okay, so and then here one more thing, like for example, the task groups, right, that is the grouping of task, like downloading the artifact, that is the one task, and copying into the Azure app service, so that is the totally two tasks, right? So you can keep it in one task group, so that you can refer it in the multiple maybe pipeline. Okay, so that is the task group. And then variable group is means like for example, you can store the values, maybe you can store number of variable values, and then the same variable set you can use it in the multiple pipelines. Okay, so for example, you are having one master database. Okay, maybe master database means in your company, that database, most of the application team, they are using it. Okay, so for example, they can maybe for all the team, right, so they are just using your pipeline only, Azure DevOps, only the CA tool they are using it. So they have to provide the connection string and then the username password to all the maybe the application team or all the build and release pipeline. Okay, so in this scenario, maybe let's say like the 10 application team, they are using the database. Okay, if they want to change the database password or something, so they have to update in all the places. Okay, so for to avoid those scenarios, you can just create a one variable group. Under that you can have a maybe the SQL username and password and connection string, and the same thing, right, you can be use it in multiple pipeline. Okay, and then maybe if you want to update any password on expiration, you can just change that, so that it will be reflected in all the pipelines. So it will take that latest value from the task variable group, so that maybe we don't want to update in all the places. Okay, so and here only one thing is like the task group and variable group, right? So this will be only supported for the visual designer based release pipelines. Okay, maybe the task group, it will support only for the visual designer based maybe the release pipeline. The variable groups and the templates, right, that we can use it for the maybe YAML based pipeline. Okay, so the task group, it won't, maybe the YAML won't support, but the variable groups and templates, we can use it from the YAML pipeline. Okay, and then the alerting mechanism. So for example, if the build has failed, or maybe the scheduled build, right, maybe it will be automatically happening in the during midnight. So if there is any failure, right, it has to notify through mail, or maybe the some messaging platform, right, so that maybe we can maybe when we are just starting the work, we can just see that email notification there is some failure, so that we can see what is the happening with the build, and then we can rerun it, or if there is any problem, we can let the dev team know. So that we need to know the alerting mechanisms also. Okay, so maybe that one also we are going to see. Okay, and then the next one is integrating with third party tools. Okay, so the first one is service connection and service hooks. Okay, so for example, maybe if you want to connect any server very secure manner, so at the time we will be using the service connection, so which anyway we are going to see in the maybe the next slide also. But for example, right, for just for an example, um, maybe the Azure, right, Azure cloud. Okay, so you want to maybe you want to authenticate the Azure cloud first, and after that only you will be able to deploy the application, maybe deploy the application and all. Okay, for every time, right, even we cannot provide the username and password, so it has to securely configure in some places, right. So that is the where the service connection is comes into the picture. Okay, so we can just initiate the connection, and wherever it is required we can just call it, like similar like Azure resource manager, and then Docker registry, and most of the service connection by default the Azure DevOps is providing. And based on scenario, so we can use our we can use those service connections type. Okay, and then the service hooks. So for example, whenever maybe the particular event is happen, so at the time we have to trigger the particular workflow. Okay, so for example, when the source code has been pushed, at the time we have to we have to maybe run the Bamboo or Jenkins the build job, right. So build pipeline, we have to trigger it. So in those kind of scenarios we can use the service hooks. Maybe and another one more example is like maybe whenever the build is successfully completed, you want to post a message in Slack channel, so that everyone in your teams aware that so the build has completed, so that the testing team, they can start testing on it. Okay, so this is the overview. Okay, maybe so maybe not you are good, right, maybe so far you are good, right, but anyway, for each and everything we are going to see in the subsequent slide also.
Sure.
Yeah. So the next one is yeah, so as we discussed already, the Azure DevOps release pipeline, it will support pipeline as code. So the pipeline as code, right, so this is the one of the popular terminology here. So for example, the infrastructure as code, and so basically, right, so for all the infrastructure or all the changes, we have to bring into our source control management. So which means like as like the developer is coding and then they are checking the code, right. So similar way, for all the infrastructure changes or all the build and pipelines, everything we have to get into that pipeline, so that we can easily manage the pipeline also, and then we can version it very properly. Okay, so that is what the pipeline has code. So here, right, so some of the other tools, right, they are providing in JSON or YAML support also for this one. But anyway, from that Azure DevOps, right, it is providing the YAML one. So that is the currently the latest one, right. So for example, when you are taking any configuration language from the maybe the XML, okay, from XML. So most of them, they have moved to JSON, and from everyone currently they are moving towards AML, okay. So that is very easy to maybe understand for the human, and as well as the system also, it is very easy to understand. And even the at the end, right, even the maybe for creating some configuration, if maybe let's say, maybe for an example, so you are making some configuration for your cloud, maybe the infrastructure. When you are doing the same thing, maybe in the JSON, it will take maybe 1 kilobyte of size file. But when you are taking in the YAML pipeline, right, so it will take only the maybe zero point 0.5 KB only, because this is comparably lightweight with from the JSON, with compared to the JSON. So that is why, so everyone maybe in the all the configurations, right, so everyone they are using the YAML pipeline, okay. So and then the futures, so the in the future wise, we know like the task group, and then the agent machine, the alerting, and also the maybe if you want to integrate with the third party, so everything similar like the build pipeline we have seen, right. So the same thing, most of the things, this is possible in the release pipeline also. And then the build and release tasks, so we know, right. Uh, so from the pipeline, so it is broken into stages, and under the stages we will be having the many jobs, okay. And then the job will have the many tasks, so each and every unit of work, right. So if we are considering it like task, so for example, downloading the artifact and then copying the artifact to the deployment platform, so those things and all uh, kind of build and release task, okay. And then the release jobs, so maybe the grouping of the task, right, we are calling it like job, okay. So for example, we can just say like building and web application, so that is the one job, okay. So for this job we need one agent machine to run all the tasks associated with the particular job, okay. So the task can be like I need to check out the source code from Git repository, and then the next one is like I need to restore the dependencies, I need to build the application, I need to package it. So these are all the tasks associated with it, okay. And then the multi configuration and multi agent jobs. So the multi configuration means like, so for example, you will be having the same job, okay, but only the some of the configuration only you will change it. So you will be running the same job multiple times, but each time you will be just changing some configuration alone, okay. So for example, you want to deploy the .NET application, so .NET web application, so it will basically, right, it will basically it will support uh, maybe the both platforms like the Linux and then the Windows, okay. So because since the .NET Core is the cross platform based one, so it will support in both the environments, okay. So if you want to deploy it, so that you will be using the same commands only, but only you will be changing the type only, the Linux or Windows. So in this case, so we are calling it like a multi configuration. And then so that, right, so the both the maybe the deployment, it will be happening in the same agent machine only. So the only the multi configuration, but it will be happening in the same environment alone, okay. But the next one is the multi agent jobs, okay. So for example, you are running you are basically running the 1,000 test, okay, for your for testing your maybe your application. So if you are running all the 1,000 in a one stretch in any one of the agent machine, it will definitely take 5 minutes, 10 minutes, so based on the complexity involved in the test cases, okay. So if there is no dependency with the all the test cases, what you can do is like you can equally split the 1,000 test cases to two different agent machine, okay. So which means like so maybe, right, so initially if it is taking 10 minutes of time to running 1,000 test cases, now as the two agent machine, right, so taking two loads, so which means like currently it will take just a 5 minutes only, um, because currently the two agent machine is working the same script, so that is why we are calling it like multi agent jobs, okay. So the next one, Okay, so the provisioning and configuring target environment. Okay, so the provisioning we know, so the maybe we can call it like the infrastructure provisioning. Okay, so for example, maybe if you are deploying means it could be any environment, so that also based on the project. So if I am having the .NET project, my target environment can be like maybe Azure App Service, IaaS server, or maybe the Kubernetes server. Okay, maybe if it is the Java application, the target server can be like Tomcat server, or the maybe app service, or maybe the Docker platform also. And then like the node also, maybe the NGNX server and all, they would be using it. Okay, so now maybe as part of the continuous delivery, as I said already, we are not just automating the application deployment. So whatever the underlying maybe resources for the application deployment, right? So those things also we have to bring it into the source control, and then we have to automate it. So for example, I am deploying a .NET application on Azure. Okay, maybe in the last session also, right, I have maybe I have shown the demo one, how to create the Azure app services using Azure portal. Okay, but that way, right, so that is fine for our learning purpose. But when we are going into the project level run, all right, so everything we have to maybe whatever the manual action I have did, so everything I have to do in the automated way. So when we are going to the automated way, so what is the maybe the possible thing is like, either you can use the any kind of the infrastructure provisioning tool. Okay, so currently the option available is like Terraform, Ansible, ARM templates. So those are all the possible options. So you have to create the script for that one, and then finally maybe you have to integrate with your the release pipeline. Okay, so that it will take the release of the particular script, and then before running the application deployment task, right, so it will run the ARM templates, maybe, so that it will spin up the environment. And once the environment is up, and maybe once it is up, then we can copy the application deployment to the infrastructure. Okay, so that, yeah, as part of the continuous delivery, not only like application develops deployment, we have to take the underlying other resources also, as like maybe the infrastructure, and maybe any kind of firewall rules, everything, right? So we have to bring it into the code base. So maybe the all the firewall or whitelisting the IP, so everything, right, we can bring it into the same the infra provisioning the script. Okay, so that as I said, right, so these are all the popular maybe the concepts in DevOps, like everything they have to automate it. So for automation, what we have to do is like we have to script it. So the scripting we are making it as the code, so that with the same reference code we can run anytime. So maybe we can easily spin up the environment, and maybe when the resource is not required, right, so I can just delete it maybe in the during the weekend and all, right. So maybe the dev and the testing environment and all, so we are not going to test anything with the in the weekend time, so that we can delete it. So okay, and maybe when we are starting in the work, maybe during weekdays, so at the time you can just run the command, so that the infrastructure will be automatically created, so that you can work maybe very effectively, because you are storing the cost, right. So for example, if it is taking some amount for running the resources on weekend, so that is now we are resolving it, right. So and also, right, maybe we can automate it also. For example, for every day Monday 7 a.m., so I have to spin up the maybe environment, so those tasks and all, so we can schedule it based on our demand. Okay, and then the next one is the types of environment. Okay, so basically, right, the deployment, so we know like any at least any environment would be there. So for example, maybe in your case your target environment is like any one of the database server, maybe it could be the SQL server or database, or maybe the Oracle one. Okay, so for example, it can be in on-premise or cloud environment. Okay, so that is the classification, on-premise or cloud. So maybe the on-premise means, so they will be managing the server. Maybe if they are the enterprise, the very big maybe the team, so they will be having own data center in multiple places, and maybe if they are a very small maybe company, in that case, so they will be having the own server, everything they will be managing it, but it's not at the very high scale like data center. Okay. And then the cloud, so maybe based on our maybe demand, if you want to use the particular resource, we can go to the cloud. And then there actually, right, the infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, function as a service, and then the Kubernetes cluster. Okay. So for example, infrastructure as a service means you are just buying the infrastructure from the cloud service provider. The cloud service provider is like Azure, AWS, GCP, and all. Okay. And then you are buying the infrastructure, right? So which means like you are buying either VM. So inside the VM you will be installing all the setup, like installing the server, everything you will be doing by yourself, like patching the update, so everything. Okay. And then next one is the platform as a service. So as we already used the one of the platform service, right, Azure app service. So we have seen how we can deploy our application to .NET application to Azure app service. So that, right, so there maybe that we have deployed the application within just maybe 5 minutes of time only, because maybe we are just created the app service account, and inside that we have just chosen what is the runtime of our application. So that's it. And after that we have to just build, and then we need to copy the artifact in the app service environment. Okay. So for example, right there we are not worrying anything about the what is the Windows version and what is the current maybe OS version. So if it is the older one, do we need to update or not? So we are not going to worrying about anything. And otherwise, right, if it is in the infrastructure, so you have to make sure everything is correct, and then the IaaS server also you have to be installed, and maybe there inside that you have to create the folders, and then you need to copy the files manually. So everything you have to do. But in the platform as a service, we are just creating the app service maybe account, and the next one is we have copied the build binaries. Okay. And then the function as a service. Okay. At least in the platform as a service we have provided the application binary. Okay. But in the function as a service, right, so it's not like any maybe the project or source code something. It is something like the task or single function alone. Okay. So the particular function, it will be executed based on some kind of the events. Okay. So for example, whenever the storage blob getting the maybe the file or something, at the time I need to run the particular function. So those kind of scenarios we can just use function as a service. So there you will be providing the function alone directly. It's not like any application binary or minified binary and all. It's not as like platform as a service. We are just providing the direct code. Either it could be like Python, .NET, Java. So it could be maybe whatever the supported languages from the Azure. So you will be just providing some piece of code only there, and whenever the particular event is happened, so it will be executed. Okay. And then the next one is cluster. Like maybe the cluster means like AKS, we can say Azure Kubernetes Service. But anyway, but I am differentiating as the one of the thing, but it's not like that. Azure Kubernetes also one of the platform as a service, so it will be comes under um, uh, Azure platform as a service. So there, right, maybe there will be the only one master node, and under that all the child node will be there. So for example, if you are going to any microservice architecture or anything, so you will be having many application like 100 or thousands of microservices will be there. So at the time, right, you cannot go and create 1,000 app services and then you have to deploy. That's not the efficient way, right? So at the time you may be going with Azure Kubernetes service. So they will be giving the maybe future to deploy all the 1,000 microservices in the single AKS cluster, because the 1,000, right, so obviously the application would be big, and then we need maybe huge maybe the hardware resources also, like memory and CPU, everything. Okay. So and also, right, so here you want to understand like horizontal scaling and vertical scaling. Okay, the vertical scaling means, for example, you have the VM, but anyway, right? So for example, you have deployed the database, the database server also, maybe the RDBMS. Let's say like it is the SQL server. Okay, so for example, the when the day by day, right? So the DB size, everything, it will be grown every year. Okay, so which means like, so for to increase the performance, so there is no way except like maybe increasing the maybe the horizontal scaling. For example, earlier if it is the 32 GB of RAM, maybe you have to update to 64 GB or whatever it is possible, and then the disk space, everything. Okay, but this vertical scaling, right, it is possible at some point of time. Okay, I don't know, maybe the what is the maximum RAM memory limit now, like 64 or 128, or even, right, maybe the if you are keeping 260 GB of memory, is maybe the cost will be lesser. But if you are going the 164 GB, that is the highest cost, everything, right? So at the time, so that is the reason, so everyone, they will be going with horizontal scaling. Okay, but some of the things, the RDBMS and all, I don't know whether it will maybe uh, it will allow for the horizontal scaling, or it will accept maybe support or not. So the horizontal scaling means maybe all the information, for all, maybe if you are having the huge amount of data, or the maybe the computing resource, right? So it will be spreaded across multiple child node. Okay, so for example, if you are deploying 1,000 microservices, maybe that can be deployed into the multiple maybe the 10 individual VM virtual machines. Okay, but so that, right, the Kubernetes will handle all the 10 VM, but we don't want to worry about anything on that. So behind the scene, it will be deployed all the maybe the 1,000 application into the 10 machines. Maybe let's say like, for example, for each maybe the VM, it will have the 100 microservices. If you are saying like if equally the logic or the memory size of the container, everything is same, then it will assign the 100 microservices to each VM. Okay, but maybe we don't want to maybe manage all the individual VMs. We just want to provide maybe how many number of child node we need, how to need to scale in, scale out. So those kind of configuration only we will be providing there. Okay, so that is what the clustering concept, like similar like the Azure elastic elastic search, the search engine, right? So that one also, it will work as like the same way. So there will be one master node, and then it could be many the child nodes associated with that. And then master node, it will know like to whom we need to send the request, and maybe which one node currently having the more load, so that we should not assign the further load also to the same node. So that it will know all the maybe the capability to detect so available nodes, and then it will redirect the request to the corresponding one, so that we will get the maybe the response as much as possible. Okay, so Mebrad, so if you have any query, you can let me know. So Mebrad, so okay, I think you are good with that. Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, thanks, Mebrad. Okay, so the next one is service connections. Okay, so as I said already, if you want to connect any kind of the external platform, sorry, so any kind of external platform, right? Let's say like Azure cloud, or maybe if you are deploying a Tomcat server or IaaS server, right? So we have to connect the particular resource very securely. Okay, so in the scenario only the service connection is coming into the picture, so that, right, whenever the particular connection is needed, we can just choose the particular service in the drop down. Okay, so for example, um, yeah, so for example, so currently I am going into uh, the service connections. So here, right? Like here, the service connections. Okay. So currently the Azure Pass sponsorship. So this subscription is added here. So that is there any kind of maybe whenever I am dealing with any kind of maybe action with Azure, right? At the time I can just maybe select the particular Azure Pass, and also, right, similar way you can have the mini subscription also, so that you can create a n number of service connections here, and whatever it is needed you can select that one appropriately. Okay, for example we can see what are all the options are there, similar like a Bitbucket Cloud, Azure Service Bus. So this is for the message queuing, and then the Docker host, and then Docker registry, GitHub. Okay, so if you want to connect, and then the Jenkins also. Okay, so if you want to connect for the particular resource for anything, so you have to just authenticate the resource, and after that wherever you need the same resource in your pipeline. So for example you want to trigger the Jenkins pipeline, so whenever the latest code is pushed to repos. Okay, so in those scenario, right, I want to use the Jenkins. Okay, so when I'm configuring that one, so I cannot provide the credentials and all there. Okay, so that will be change very often, right? Maybe if they are rotating the secrets for every 1 or 2 weeks, I don't want to edit the pipeline file for every time. For example, once that is materialized, then we should not touch the Azure pipeline file unless if there is any bug or enhancement. Okay, for kind of like updating the password or username. So those things and all we have to be externalized. So in the externalized, right, that is maybe, so under that the one option is like service connections. Okay, so for example I'm just choosing Bitbucket Cloud. So it is asking maybe what configuration, so which one we are going to choose, like Bitbucket or something. So when I'm just clicking on authorize, right, so it will open the Bitbucket page, and then it will ask you the username and password, and upon the successful, so in between, right, you will get some.
So, sorry.
Yeah.
Bitbucket is the same functionality with Jenkins.
So same functionality like Jenkins, or you are asking how?
Jenkins, and is that like we are using
Okay. Yeah.
this
Yeah, got it, my brother. Okay.
Bitbucket like Jenkins? Is this it has the same functionality?
Okay. So for example, right, so all the things are different tool. Okay, like Bitbucket, Bamboo, Azure Repos, and Jenkins. So all of the things, right, all of them are different tools. Okay, so you have to understand, like, there
For
are
the same.
no.
Okay.
Yeah, there are two different categories. Maybe in this all the tools,
Okay.
right, there are two things. One is mainly for the source control management, and another one is the CI tool. Okay, so the source control management means, right, so it will be just hosting the Git repositories. Okay, so the
Yes.
Bitbucket, Azure Repos, GitLab, GitHub, everything, right? The online, private, or public Git hosting repositories, the hosting the Git repositories. Okay, but another one thing is like CI tool. Okay, the CI tool means like
Yeah.
it will be having the build and release pipeline. The example is like Azure pipeline and Bamboo, Jenkins, and all. It will be comes under the CI tool. Okay, so as you said, the maybe the Jenkins is the CI tool, and then the Bitbucket is the source code repository management tool. Okay, but for
Oh,
example,
okay.
yeah, so this is the main classification. But and also, right, so for example, when the maybe the when the tool everything is they are adding the new feature every time, right? So they are also thinking like we for the Bitbucket, the company, right, so they are thinking like we are already managing the source code repository. Why we don't want to add the pipeline, the CI tool feature also within the same platform? So if they are providing the same feature within the maybe the source control management tool, so that all the client, right, so they will be more interested. So instead of having the multiple tools, so they can be done all the CI/CD also with the same tool. So that is why the day by day, right, so they are keep on adding the new feature But I think, right, so as of now, as I understand, the Bitbucket, right, they don't have any CI tool future. So currently they are working like only the as the source control management tool. But in the future, right, they may be adding the feature to maybe working as the CI tool also. So currently, right, the GitLab and all, they will be working as the source control management tool and as well as the CI tool.
Mhm.
Okay, you got it right. So
Yeah, so now Bit bucket is like this manager to
yeah,
manage
yeah,
the
yeah,
source.
yeah. Mainly
Okay.
for the source control, but maybe currently, right? Maybe that also maybe it's differ based on the version of the Bitbucket currently we are using it. Okay, so I think maybe in
Mhm.
the latest version of the Bitbucket, right, they may be having the more future, including the CI/CD pipeline also. But definitely, if you are using more 1 or 2 years back, the older version, they may be having only the
Right.
source control functionality only.
Okay. Got it. Yeah.
Okay, so
Okay.
yeah, so now the service connections, right? So how we are securely connecting the maybe the third party the components or the resources. The one thing is like Azure cloud. Maybe we are going to use the Azure app service only, right? Maybe at the time we definitely want to authenticate with Azure cloud. Okay, so in those scenario, maybe I'm just created the service connection for the Azure here, and maybe wherever it is record, I can just in the drop down I can choose the service connection. Okay, so for example, right, I'm just creating one more service connection for the Azure one. Okay, so for example, I'm just choosing Azure resource manager, and the service the so here they are saying, right, so there are many things like service principal automatic something. So I'm just providing the by default one. Okay, so here they are saying like the scope level, so the subscription management or machine learning workspace. So here, right, I am choosing the subscription level. Okay, so for example, right, my Azure DevOps account, I am using one Microsoft account, right, tamilselvan.sellapan@gmail.com. Okay, that is my Microsoft account. I am logged in with the DevOps DevOps account. Okay, so by default, when you are choosing the scope level as the subscription, it will just verify is there any maybe subscription associated with my Microsoft account, so that it will default, it will pull the subscription under. Okay, so for example, there are two subscription with my Microsoft account. One is the Azure Pass and another one is the free trial. Okay, so that is already expired, but still it is showing the active and disabled one. So here I can choose whatever I want. So because the active one, right, the Azure Pass only, so that is provided by Daniel. Okay, and then under that, what is the resource group you are going to deal with that. Okay, so here the resource group is it will list what is the available resource group now. I think if it is not there, then you have to select it. Okay, I think it is taking some time. Yeah. Yeah, I think, I don't know, maybe sometimes it will take some time to fetch the maybe the current list of resource groups in the Azure account, but mostly that is the straightforward only. Okay, here you can select the Azure subscription, and then under the subscription, whatever the resource group is there, you can select anyone, and after that you can name something like Azure subscription or Dev one, QA one, or maybe the production one. So some kind of naming you can provide, and after that you can save it here. Okay, so that whenever you are creating the subscript, maybe the any Azure deploy related task, right, you can directly maybe select the subscription. So for example, I'm going one example. So for example, now you have created the service connection for Azure the pass subscription. So this one you are clear, right? Maybe the next one I will show from where we are consuming the service connections.
Okay.
Okay, so the next one, so for example, I'm going to the pipeline. So from the pipeline only we are going to deploy, right? So let's say, so this is the pipeline. So here we are having many uh, yeah, so here we are having many the last session, right? We have seen the release and then stages and all. Okay, so this is the app service deployment. So the app service is one of the service from the Azure, right? So here I'm just going into this one. I am clicking on edit release pipeline. Okay, so here right, I'm choosing the deploy Azure app service task, and here you can see like the connection type. Okay, the connection type Azure manager, but here right it will show the subscription automatically, but I don't know why it is not. Edit the release pipeline. Yeah, so here right, so for example Azure subscription. So this one we already added as the service connections, right? So that I can just choose the what is the service connection we need. So we have created in the Azure Pass subscription service connection there, right? So I'm just choosing it here, so that maybe when we are configuring the task, it will use the subscription for the finding the resources and deployment and all. So you got it right. So this is the release pipeline, and I'm going. We are having the maybe the resources for deploying into Azure App Service, but for the Azure App Service, right? So because there are many accounts, we cannot just say like you want to deploy into Azure App Service. So you have to mention what is your subscription, what is your resource group, where we want to deploy your application. Okay. So in this case, I am just choosing what is the subscription here, like I'm just choosing. So these are all the available service connections because we have configured there, right? So since we have configured there, so it is showing here. But if you're not if you're having many service connection, it will list here. Okay. And also like maybe this is the available Azure subscription. This one also we can choose it. But the most optimal way is like choosing as the service connections, so that if there is any change, you can just update there, so that it will be automatically update in all the pipelines where we are using the same service connection. So you got it right, my bro.
Yeah, it was, but earlier you were trying to select the resource
Yeah, yeah,
connection,
yeah, correct. So the service connection,
not
because
subscription.
in this Azure Pass subscription only, right? We have the
Mhm.
Azure App Service account created, because there only we want to do the deployment. Okay,
Uh-huh.
so that is why I'm just choosing this one. Otherwise, right, I want to provide the credentials and all now here, because that's not the good way, right? So from the pipeline,
Mhm.
if you're entering all your username and password, it's not the secure one.
No.
Okay, but anyway, they are not allowing you to do provide the username and password and all here, but just I'm saying. So here they are saying some standard approach, like we have to create as the service connections, and after that you have to provide the choose the appropriate maybe service connection. Okay, and for example, right, you want to check out the git, maybe the Bitbucket repository, you want to do the Bitbucket checkout. Okay, I think here this is they are providing as the uh, clone, maybe their
Mhm.
marketplace. So we have to install it, and after that we need to try. Maybe I'm just choosing GitHub. Okay, so here create, edit, or delete a GitHub release, commit. Okay, download GitHub release. Okay, so for example, right, I'm just want to make some comment on GitHub. Okay, in this scenario, so I have to choose the GitHub connection. Okay, but currently, right, in the service connection, I am not created any service connection for the GitHub account. If it is there, it will list it here so that I can choose it. So you got it
Mhm.
right. So similar like
So
Azure.
where do you, okay,
Yeah,
where do you create the connection?
yeah, here also we can create the new connection. So
Oh, okay.
when we are creating, right, it will be automatically listed under the service connections tab.
Uh-huh.
Okay, but that is based on your requirement only, my brother. So in this scenario, right,
Right.
in our scenario we are just using Azure cloud, so I'm just creating
Right.
the service connection for this one. So if you are using GitHub or Bitbucket or Jenkins something, so you have to create the service connection based on your scenario.
Right.
Okay. So, okay, my brother. So you are good with the service connection. Okay. The next one, right? So we are just going to see the modularized task and templates. Yeah, maybe we can just take manage and modularized task and templates. So as I said in the overview, the slide, like the task group, right? So similar like all the other CI tools and maybe the other technologies also. So they will be having the concept called the library, right? So some kind of common reusable library. So wherever they are using it, so they will be just plug in the library so that they can leverage the all the other common functions, everything. Okay. So similar like the task group means, which means like encapsulates the sequence of tasks, and for that task, right, they can be maybe parameterized also. So for example, if you are deploying any kind of application, right, only the project name only it will vary, but for specific to Python, right, for deploying the Python application, it won't, the steps won't be vary, but only the parameters, maybe the project name or the git repository path. So those kind of path only it would vary. So in this case, yeah, we can parameterize it, and then whenever we are calling it, we can pass the corresponding parameters. Okay. And then the standard and the centralized way to update all the maybe pipelines. So if you are updating in a one single place, so it will be reflected in the all the place. But here the thing is, so it's not be supposed to maybe supported in the YAML pipeline. So instead of that, here we are going to use the templates. Okay, the templates also, for example, we have the stages, variables, and jobs and all, right. We can be create separate file for that one, and then wherever it is required, then we can just provide the file path of the particular uh, maybe particular reusable file, the template, so that it will be automatically our file also will be using the particular job or stage name. Okay. So the variable groups, yeah, this one also the same thing. So how the maybe similar like task groups, we can have a similar set of variable groups, and we can name it, and wherever it is required, we can just call maybe this is the variable groups I'm going to use in the pipeline, so that all the values, everything will be maybe available across the stages or pipelines everywhere. Okay, maybe I will, maybe here the thing is like the task group, right? So it is not supported in YAML, but you have we can use the variable groups or templates maybe in the YAML pipeline. So I will just show how to create the variable groups. So for example, so under this pipeline, right, we are having library and task groups and all. So here the task groups, right? How we can create the task group is like you can go to any one of the release pipeline. For example, I'm going into this particular pipeline and then clicking on edit. So for example, right here we have the two maybe only one task. Okay, like deploy Azure App Service. Maybe I will create a one more task also. I'm just choosing this one, and for example I'm creating one more task also, just for an example. This is not the correct one, maybe for example the .NET code, so that is the one task. Okay, just for an example only I'm added. Okay, so how to show the demo of how to create the variable task. Okay, I'm just selecting the both task, and then I am right clicking on it, and then here I can create the task group. So one or more, the selected tasks have settings linked to pipeline parameters. Okay. So here, yeah, maybe here we are. inheriting some pipeline parameters, right? So that we cannot use this one. Maybe I will remove this one. Maybe I will just use the copy and uh, maybe the download and copy task alone. This is the download artifact task, and next one is some copy task. Okay, maybe I will provide one more download task itself. So just for an example, okay, I can select the two tasks, and then here I can create the task group so that it will be created under this one. Maybe here, right, so we can parameterize. So inside that, right, maybe based on our maybe logic we can change that one, and maybe whenever we are maybe calling the particular the task groups, right, so we have to pass the variables also in the section. Okay, so this is how we can create the task group. Okay, like I'm just naming it like download something, and maybe the category something, yeah, we can change it here. And then the workspace, so we have to maybe where we are doing the downloading and all, like so here it is like a working directory by default. If you want to change it something, you can provide like here, right, the directory to download the file will be created for each. Okay, so this is how we can create the task group. Okay, so and then the variable groups, right, so under the library. Okay, so here the variable groups, I'm just clicking on here like a variable group name. I'm just saying like a db variable groups. I think it's the page is closed. So for example, I'm going into the pipeline and the library, and here I'm just creating a variable group like database database connection. Okay, link secrets from Azure Key Vault as variables. Okay, so for example, here, right, we can refer the maybe variable value from the Azure Key Vault also. So we have seen one example, right? If maybe any secret or password we can store in the Azure Key Vault, and then we can refer the same in our pipeline also. Okay, so here maybe if I'm inheriting the this one, so I need to provide the secret, maybe the subscription, everything I have to provide. But anyway, right, so in this scenario we are going to add some Azure Key Vault and all. You can just add some normal value like the username, maybe here something like az400, and and after that password, this is something like maybe you can add some password something. Okay, but here, right, if it is the password or something, you can change it to secret also if it is the password, so that the value will be masked, and wherever they are using, right, it won't be printed in the log. So if it is printed in the log, so anyone can see the password details and all, right. So if you are making as the secret, then the value will be masked, so we cannot see the secret value. So after that, right, so you can just save it, and wherever we are using, right, maybe there we have to provide like the variable group, and then the name we have to provide, and then all the values and all will be maybe passed there. So for example, right, we have this pipeline. Okay, so we have Azure assignment service pipeline. I'm just clicking on edit, and for everywhere, right, the variables we are directly hard coding here. So instead of that, maybe we can provide the variable group also. Yeah, here something like we can it will provide yeah, maybe yeah, it will there will be some option to mention the variable group in the pipeline file, so that we can provide it so that in that particular stage and the pipeline, right, it will be automatically inherited. So that is what the variable groups concept. So now you know, right, so how to create the task group and a library, the variable group. But mostly, right, the task group we won't use it. So when you're going with the pipeline based approach, the YAML pipeline, so you won't be used it. And then the library, maybe here we will be able to create the variable group. The same thing we can be refer in the uh, so we can refer in the pipeline also. Okay, so the next thing, so Mebrad, are you there?
Yes.
Yeah. So you are clear, right? So how to create the maybe the task group and then variable group. Maybe to refer the variable group, right? So we can see in the subsequent session. But currently, you can just know how to maybe create the task group and library group.
No.
Okay. So the next thing is automated integration and test automation integration. Okay. So for example, this is the CD pipeline, continuous delivery pipeline. So for example, when it comes to testing, right, the from the when the maybe the development is happening, at the time the dev team they will add the unit test cases, and as part of the build itself we will be verifying the unit test cases. So we don't want to verify the unit test cases in the CD stage, which means like release pipeline stage. Okay, so after the pipeline, what we will do is like so that also based on the application type only. Maybe if it is the maybe if you are doing the SQL automation, right, so there we don't need any kind of testing. Basically, maybe you can just run some kind of script in the database, and maybe the number of tables, number of rows, if that is possible. So that is the post validation. So if it is maybe if it matches our expectation, so that is fine. Okay, but whatever I'm saying here is like maybe the typically microservice API based, and then the front end maybe the React based or Angular based application. Okay, so after the deployment, okay, so we have built and then you have deployed the application, and after that, so the UI, the web application also deployed. Okay, so that the endpoint is hosted, so that uh, through the any kind of HTTP client tool, you can access the particular endpoint. So maybe you can open the Chrome or Edge browser, so you can open the application. But before doing that one, right, so we can do some kind of UI testing, some kind of like uh, the Selenium testing automation shoot. So something is there. So the testing team, they will create the test case in there. So what it will do is like the particular testing script, right, it will integrate both our application code and then our so and after that it will connect the application also through the Chrome driver. Okay, so which means so it will automatically open the Chrome browser, and then it will log into the application by just providing the username and password. So the username and password, those kind of data and all, they will be keep in some kind of CSV format files. Okay, so whatever they are doing, right, so if it is like some employee management application, okay, so after the login, you will be having the option to add an employee, edit and update, delete the employee. Okay, so they will be having the test case for each and every operation, and then if it is successful, and then they will make it as the test case is successful, so that the further the deployment process, the communication we can be sent to the further team. Okay, so that is what the UI testing. Maybe the popular one using outside is like Selenium automation testing. Okay, and then the next one is the load testing. For example, for each application, right, they will be having some kind of the loading or the performance requirement also. So something like maybe always in my application around 100 user will be there, so that we need to see like we need to maybe hit the application as like 100 users. So for that, the maybe the load runner or some kind of other load testing tool is there, which one you can use it. Okay, so basically, so the performance testing team, they will create the they will have the script, everything. We just want to integrate in our application. So that is the thing. Okay, the next one is the availability test. Okay, so availability test means so after the deployment, we just want to make sure whether the API is reachable or not. So if it is reachable, we can hand over to testing team, or we can ask the test automation to run. So before that, right, at least we need to know whether that is in the reachable state. So for that one, what we mostly we will do is like, we will just do the curl on the HTTP request. Okay, and after that, right, so based on the response, we can understand like whether it is the 200 response code. So there are many HTTP response code, right, like 200, 404, 400, 420, 500, 502 something. Okay, so if it is the 200 means, right, which means like our application, the request is we are able to get something. Okay, which means like, okay, our application is deployed. Okay, the next one is like, maybe you are getting the response code like maybe the 404, which means like the URL is not found. So that maybe there is some problem with the deployment, the application is not hosted or not started properly. So that you have to check what is the problem in it. So that is what the availability test. Okay, so most of the this availability test, right, so there is a one tool called application insight in Azure service. So there we can provide the URL, and then will maybe it will periodically, it will check the application whether it is available or not, maybe, right. So sometimes currently it is working fine, but after 2 or 3 or something it is not working, which means like we have to the regularly or the periodically we have to test it, right. So that is what the availability test it will do. Okay, so this is just a general thing, like maybe after the deployment what you want to do. So that is the based on your application type. So if it is the front end or web application, you want to do UI testing, which means so you want to integrate the Selenium automation testing script with your application. But the script creation and all, you don't need to worry, those and all the testing team responsibility. Maybe sometimes, right, the most of the team, they won't have the testing script also, they won't be prefer to go with the manual testing. So in this case, you don't need to go with you don't need to do any kind of testing integration at all, because that is not there, right. So that similar applies for the load testing. But the availability testing, right, maybe you don't need any other requirement, like maybe you need to have the testing script or something. For this availability testing, right, you just need the application endpoint. So that as a DevOps engineer, right, we should know after the application is started, what will be the application endpoint. Okay, so with that you can just maybe do some curl on that, and then finally based on our response, so we can see whether the application is maybe return the response successfully, or the not found or forbidden, or any kind of the internal server error, anything, right. So we can get it from there. Okay, and sometimes, right, so when there is something like complex kind of application, so the ping something like for example the initial, the external configuration or external interface verification, they will be having some one more endpoint also within the application endpoint. Okay, so for example our application is like employee management portal, and then the endpoint is like slash and verify availability. So that is the one endpoint. If you are hitting that one, so we will get all the information, like the database we are able to connect, and then messaging queue we are able to connect, the FTP server we are able to authenticate. So those kind of things we are able to maybe see what, maybe if there is any issue, right, we can directly see maybe if there is any troubleshooting. So those kind of health check URLs, it will be helpful. Okay, but I don't know in the .NET is there anything is there to like health check. But in the Java, right, so there is something like health check endpoint is there. We just want to add some library, and so that library it will provide one more host, maybe one more endpoint. So when we are hitting that endpoint, then we will get the other external the infra dependencies status also. That library is something like actuator, I guess. Okay, so if you are integrating, if the developer is integrating in their Java code, so we can easily get the availability endpoint. So we can just maybe do the HTTP on this, and then we will get the results. So based on that, yeah, we can make the bill make the deployment pass or failure. Okay, so Mebrat, you are good, right? Okay. So the next one is automated inspection of health. Okay. So for example, we are seeing many things right in Azure itself. So the notification also, so they're giving some future. Okay. So for example, maybe in the maybe in the build and deployment itself, right? If there is any failure or any event occurred, then we need to notify. Okay. So for example, the event means there are some particular maybe event is happened in any the Azure repos or in the Azure build pipeline or Azure artifacts anywhere. Okay, we can just set up the events, and upon the event trigger we will get the notification. Okay, so there are actually something called a notification subscriber, so we have to add that one. So and finally, right, we will be getting the notifications also. Okay, so for example, I will open the here. I'm going to, yeah, I'm going to resource tracker. Yeah, here under the notifications. Yeah, so here, right, so you have all the subscribed notification. Okay, so this is the event build is completed, build completes. If the build is completed, so who are all needs to be notified? The individual members in the resource tracker team or whoever pushing the code. So that those kind of things you can maybe set it up here. Okay, here like notifies a resource tracker team. Okay, and then the pull request reviewers added some comment or they have rejected, so those things also we can add it here, like the pipeline, the pull request changes, so something we can notify here. And pull, for example, the pipeline, right, so sometimes maybe the deployment it will wait you for the approval, and once you approve then only it will be started the deployment. In those scenario, it will send the notification. And here the manual intervention, and and also, so here, right, so there are many events, and so the notification we can set it up based on that. Okay, so for example, here I am just doing some new subscription, maybe like I am just choosing the build completes or build fails, actually I'm choosing. Okay, and here maybe I'm just to provide maybe a description on that one, maybe based on our, maybe for our understanding, and then whom to be delivered. Okay, maybe members of resource tracker team by role, or maybe the team preference or custom email address. And then I think SOAP, I don't know, maybe we are not, we didn't use that, but yeah, but mostly, right, we will be using the custom email address, or most of the time, right, members of resource tracker team by role. So if I am choosing the role, right, maybe here you can say like who's changed the last, and then requested who. So based on that it will send the notifications and all. Okay, and filter, if you want to do any kind of filters you can apply it, like under the organization there are many projects, right, if you want to maybe send it for the particular project, or the maybe any project in the organization, so you can based on that you can choose the filter. Okay, and also like the one more for filter search criteria, if the status is failed then only, and all otherwise if the status should be failed, and maybe is there any other status also. The build reason is something like maybe the build reason contains like maybe artifact not found. Okay, maybe artifact is not found, maybe I'm just saying for example, but just we can make the filter such criteria so that it won't be send the notification for all the failed build. Okay, so here, right, it should be like failed build, and then the build reason also, the failure reason also, it should be like artifact is not found, so that's why it failed something. But the, yeah, based on that, yeah, mostly, right, here we will be using this one only, but I'm just saying maybe there are some other option also, you can based on your request, yeah, you can change it. Okay, so maybe you are clear on the notification part, right?
Yes. How do we provide email.
Yeah. So for example, email, right? For example, the the resource tracker team. So all the things and all they are logged into the application through the email account only, right? So that if you are providing the email, it will be automatically pushed to their email ID because the tracker team, right? This automatically it will have the reference to email everything. Okay. But sometimes if you want to provide to the custom email address, and you have to choose the name here, like uh, here it's like something like I can provide my name something gmail.com,
Mhm.
so something or comma, but I don't know, maybe if you want to provide multiple email address, right? At the time I think you can provide some comma delimiter or something, so based on that you can achieve the email address also here. Okay. Yeah. So the next one, right? The next one, the service hook. The service hook, yeah, I think the service hook is for maybe if there is any event is occurred, at the time we need to initiate the external maybe the tool actually. Okay. So for example, maybe it will just to start the workflow basically. For example, we have the repository, so as I said in the already the example, we have the repo in our code, and then Jenkins having the build pipeline. Okay. So in this scenario, whenever the build is maybe the code is pushed to Azure repos, so it has to start the build, right? Because currently our build pipeline is not managed in the Azure DevOps. Okay. So that how we can do that? So in this scenario only we are using the service hook. Okay. So we have to maybe whenever the particular action is triggered or based on our event we need, and at the time it will just call the Jenkins bamboo job, or otherwise here it will post the message in Slack channel also. Okay. But sometimes, right, maybe it will provide some default service hooks provider. If it is not there, then we will be having option to webhook. Okay. So if you are choosing the webhook, we can provide the HTTP post call, and then yeah, so and then it will automatically it will call, and then the particular action will be triggered in the other tool side. Okay. So Mebrad, you know the HTTP, the post, and those kind of webs and all, you know, right? The API.
What do you mean HTTP?
Yeah.
HTTP.
Yeah,
I
HTTP,
mean the
right?
URL.
Yeah, yeah. So this is the URL, right?
Mm.
So whenever we
URL.
are hitting it, it is just like a get request only. There are, for example, whenever you are calling it, right, there are many verbs associated with that. Okay. Whenever you are calling just here, so it is something like a get request, which means like you are just retrieving the information. Okay. But similar way, there is some other verbs also for post, get, post, put, delete. Okay. The post means, so whenever you are maybe submitting some kind of form, right, it will be submitted as the HTTP post action. Okay. So there are some other details also will be posted to the web server. So that is what the post request. Okay. So for example, you are filling up some kind of form, right? Okay, maybe any the login or the sign up form. At the time when you're clicking on submit, it will go as the HTTP post method call. Okay. Because so in the post method call, it will allow the body also what has to be created or modified in the web server level. Okay. So for example, maybe you are using some kind of maybe the A tool. Okay. So whenever the build is happen, so maybe they want to delete some kind of file in their application. Okay. So at the time what they will do is like the particular application they will provide their endpoint with the token. Okay. So you just want to provide the webhook name and the endpoint and then token details, so that automatically, right, so it will pass the details, and then maybe the corresponding action, whether it is the deleting the file or triggering the job, or maybe trigger maybe the notifying to all the team members in the maybe the creating the service now ticket, so those things and all, it will be automatically workflow will be started. Okay, maybe I will show an example so you would understood better. Okay. So for example, right here the service hook. Okay. Yeah, so here, right, so I'm just creating a maybe the mostly easiest one, right, the Slack or the Microsoft team also. Okay, so for example, okay, yeah, so for example I'm choosing the Slack one. Okay, so here we have to say like the build is completed. So these are all the maybe the allowed action even for this particular service hook. Okay, so whenever the build is completed, it wants to post some message in the Slack channel. So you have used to Slack, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, the Slack also, it's kind of the chatting tool. Okay, similar like Teams, right? The messaging tool. Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
similar like Microsoft Teams, there also you can create the channel, and there you can post a message and all. So for example, the build completed, right? If you are choosing this one, automatically it will post the messages like assignment service build is completed. So those kind of message it will post in the chat channel or Microsoft Teams channel. Okay, so otherwise, right, maybe if you are triggering all the maybe the notification or the something in the email, so it will be heavily flooded. Like maybe if you're having the maybe the 10 hundreds of microservices, then maybe there is a chance that maybe the important communication we will be missing it. So that's why maybe in the Teams or Slack channel you can create the many channel you want. Okay, like one is the dev deployment notification, QA deployment notification, and then the production notification deployment channel. Okay, so if there is maybe, right, so you won't be care about maybe the dev one, QA one. So even if there is any problem, no business impact, no issue with that. Okay, but you can be constantly monitor on the production one. If there is any issue, so we have to look on it. Okay, so for example. Uh, so for example, the build completed, this is the trigger I'm going to set. And for example, the build pipeline, right, I'm going to make here also the same thing. Maybe the whether it's all build pipeline or maybe the build status also, like succeeded partially. So if there is any filtering, we can select here. Maybe in the more maybe the more depth level, right, you can just want to know like failed one only, right? So you can just select failed one. Okay, maybe I'm just selecting assignment service alone. Okay, so in this scenario, whenever the build is completed or which means build is failed for the assignment services, at the time only I need to get notified in the particular Slack channel. Okay, so for example here, right, the next thing is it is asking the Slack the webhook URL. Okay, so maybe whoever here, right, they are saying like the Slack provided webhook URL to which an HTTP post will be sent. Okay, so for example here we need to provide the Slack webhook URL. So whoever the Slack administrator in your organization, right, they will be providing HTTP webhook URL. You can just configuring it, and after that, right, whenever the particular action is happened, then it will automatically post the messages into the channel. So you got it, right? So
Yes.
yeah, so for example, just for an example, right, I'm not having any webhook URL, so I'm just providing some normal URL. Okay, so maybe it's currently it's not appending or it is not trying to initiate the post message now, but in your case you have to provide the proper webhook URL. Okay, I'm just saying test, but definitely, right, it will fail
Right.
because the URL is not valid one. It's saying like found 302, so some kind of error or something. Okay, and for example here, right, I'm doing test here. You can say like what is the request center. Maybe during this request, right, this is the URI I have provided. Okay,
Mm.
and maybe in the body, right, so these are all the body data, the post body data has been sent. This is the build pipeline, it is failed. So that in your Slack channel, right, the all the JSON and all maybe corrected as the maybe the readable text, so that it will be easy to understand whether it is the successfully completed or failure. So in this scenario, the it will change the color, everything. Okay, maybe I'm just saying like this is the response because the 302 status code it's sent because the URL is not correct one, right? And the event is the build is complete. It is just to try the build complete one. Okay, so you can just maybe you can finish it, but anyway this is the not the valid one. So if you want
Right.
you can just finish it. Okay, so which means like what will happen is like whenever the build is failed for the assignment services, it will send the notification to the Slack channel, so that everyone they can they can maybe see that, so that they can immediately look on that issue, so before the client or someone or responding to you. Okay, yeah, so this is what the service hook. So similar like, right, so the concept is similar like the same for all the others. Okay, so for example these are all the only the things they have provided. Okay, so sometimes, right, we don't have a, maybe you are trying to do integration for the red maybe red gate. Okay, but I don't know this is there anything we can select here, but just for an example. Okay, the red gate is not a very much popular in the, maybe very much popular in the SQL automation, but that is not the widely used, right? So that they are not added the default the built-in support here. Okay, in those scenario what you have to do is like you have to choose the webhook option, and then here the same thing like build completed or something, and then finally, right, you have to provide the URL and all. So you have to provide the HTTP the URL, HTTP post URL, and then the SSL certificate if there is anything, and then if there is any username and password, and everything you have to construct it. Okay, so for example all the other things, right, so everything is the webhook only, but they are all the other the HTTP header format or post body format, everything they have done for you. But if there is no built-in support, so we have to add in our the webhook option. So that is still possible if the, maybe if there is any webhook maybe the supported by uh, maybe the Redgate, you can easily integrate from Azure DevOps to Redgate. But that one, so maybe the Redgate team they need to enable the particular feature, the webhook option they have to enable it. So then we can easily integrate the maybe the this one maybe from Azure DevOps to the Red Hat, the communication we can enable it. If there is any based on the events, if you want to trigger something, we can do that. So you got it right.
Yes.
Yeah, so the next thing, right, so the next is yeah, Azure release pipeline using YAML. Okay, so the last time, right, we are deployed the .NET Core application using the classic Visual Designer. Okay, so here, right, so I have created one pipeline. So just for an example, so for example so this is our application, right. For example in our build, so during our build pipeline, right, we have created all the configuration in the Azure pipelines.yaml file. So you remember, right, so during our build automation, so we have created some kind of build commands in the Azure pipelines, and the release pipeline also, right, what we are going to say, the release the scripts, everything we are going to open in the same file only. Okay, so for example here, right, the stages, maybe the pipeline will be having the trigger, maybe this is for the master branch, whenever the master branch updated the code, it will trigger it. And we already know like the pipeline is comprised of the stages, and after that job, the after that number of stages, and each job will have the many tasks. So this is the flow, right? Okay, the first stage is for the build one. Okay, the build one means what we are doing is like we are just installing the .NET Core 2.2 in the agent machine, and after that we are restoring the dependencies. And the next one is we are just building the project, and then we are packaging it, and then we are pushing it to the artifact, the Azure pipelines artifact. Okay, so far, so till this step we have seen in the last session. Okay, the I think previous to last session we have seen that. But maybe in the release pipeline, right, so we are going to append in the same pipeline only. Okay, so these are all the upcoming the thing, right, this is for the deployment. So instead of deploying from the Visual Designer, we can deploy from here also. Okay, but only the thing, right, so here uh, the only maybe there, right, we have mentioned like under the jobs we have mentioned like job. Okay, but in the build, right, we are going to mention it like deployment, so that it will be whatever we are mentioning under this one, it will be considered like the this is for the release pipeline. And then all the maybe the environments, everything and all will be configured here. Okay, so for example, so Mebred, you understood, right? So this is the release pipeline. We already saw that one, but for the release pipeline using YAML file, right? So what we are doing is like the similar like one more stages we are doing. For example, the display name I'm making it as dev, and we know like under the stage we have the many jobs. So I have added the job here, and then maybe instead of jobs we'll have many job in the build stage. Okay, but in the deployment release pipeline, right, the jobs will have many deployments like this is for the dev deployment, and another one is the QA deployment, something like that, right? So we have to mention like deployment. So apart from that, everything is same. Like the agent pool means like in which pool it has to run. Like I'm just choosing Ubuntu latest. Okay, this is the I'm just naming the environment like dev. Okay, so here the strategy like run once, only once only you have to run it. So if there is any retry and failure, so those things we can configure. So these are all the normal maybe the format provided by Azure DevOps. So we have to follow this one. Okay, and this is the only the change with compare to build and release. Okay, but other the task and all, right, so everything common only. For example, the download artifact, and then Azure maybe the deployment and all, right, so all the other things and all common. So for example, I will just I will just show how I have added this one. So this one, right, I have to add. So this one we don't have any choice. So we need to know. So what we have to add. But anyway, right, they will be providing intelligence also based on the intention. What is the possible option? But the task, right, the downloading artifact, and then Azure Web App, right. So those things and all you can just create by using here. So for example, I want to create the task for the download artifact. Okay, so what I can do is like I can just choose the cursor here, and then here it will be having the option. Okay, I think we need to go from here. Okay, I'm going to pipelines now. So clicking on the edit pipeline. So here you will have the task enabled, right? Because if you're editing in the repos, the option is not coming. But if you're coming through the pipeline and edit pipeline, you will have the option to the edit pipeline. Okay, the YAML file and then the visual designer. Okay, so what we are doing is like, for example, these are all the two things we have discussed, right? So I'm just to show how we can add it. Okay, so for example, the build is completed. During the release stage, what we have to do is like we have to download the artifact, and then we need to deploy it to the Azure app service. So that is the only two things. Okay, so what I'm doing is like I'm just going to comment those two things. Okay, I think this is not commenting. Maybe yeah, I will just add as like here, for example, I'm adding a new task here. For example, I need to download the artifact, right? I'm just searching the download. Okay, here we can see, right, like there are many tasks, available tasks are there, so you can choose anyone whatever that we want to do. Okay, so here I am for the download artifact, I am just choosing this one. Okay, so it is asking the format and all. So from where we have to download, so which from the build pipeline, right? So that I'm saying like current build, and then the artifact type, right? So I'm just choosing it like uh, yeah, the specific artifact or the file, but I'm just saying like the specific artifact as the artifact. Okay, but here the artifact name maybe currently it is not providing, but during our build pipeline, right, we have provided the artifact name as drop. Okay, so for example, here you can say like I have provided the artifact name as drop. Okay, so that one we are adding it. Okay, and after that maybe the matching pattern I'm adding everything, like whatever it is there in the artifact I have to download everything. So that's why I'm just choosing double star symbol, so that it will select, it will download all the files in the drop artifact. Okay, so that's it. So for example, right, what it will do is like the destination directory is artifact directory, so by default it is taking, right. So here it is artifact directory, so I'm just clicking on add. So here it is automatically added, right. So we don't want to maybe add any task and all, maybe it's not, it's like maybe the build type, those and all the parameters you can just populate in the task, and when you are clicking on add, it will automatically update here. Okay, so this is for the download build artifact, this is how I have added that. Okay, like the item pattern, so I think that this is something maybe we can there I didn't provide any value, right. I have just to provide the star only, because that is the default value, so that's why it's not displaying there. So if you are specifically mentioned like I have to take the zip file, so it will add in here. Okay, but anyway, right, so there is only one file, zip file, so that it's not a problem whether we are adding any pattern for the artifact file or not. Okay, and then the next thing is like we want to uh, copy the same thing to Azure app service. Okay, I'm just searching Azure app service. Okay, I'm just choosing this one. So here, right, the connection type is Azure manager, and here we want to choose this Azure service connection. The service connection we have already chosen, right. So I'm just clicking the service connection we already created. Okay, and application service type is like this is the Linux type. Okay, so that I am choosing the web app on Linux. Okay, and then the service name also, it will automatically fetch from the based on the service connection we choose above. Okay, and then here, right, the package or folder where it want to. So for example, right, in this task, for example the app service deploy task, it needs to know where we have downloaded the zip file. Okay, so for example here, right, we have downloaded the zip file in the artifacts directory, but here it's showing like defaults working directory. But for that, right, what you can do is like you can just copy this one, and then say the source location as this one. Okay, the source location as the artifacts directory, and under the artifacts directory it will look for the zip file, and then it will upload into the Azure app service. Okay, but the runtime stack and all we don't need to specify, because we already specified like it needs to run on the .NET Core 3.7 something. Okay, so I'm just clicking on add, so that it is created. So for example, yeah, so because right I have cursor here, so that's why it is added the file here actually. Okay, so for example I am yeah, so here, right, I'm just going to search app service, Azure app service deploy. Okay, here Azure subscription, and web app on Linux, and app service name it will fetch, and I think this one, right, we have to update, because in the defaults working directory we don't have, we have downloaded the artifact in the artifacts directory, system.artifacts directory. Okay, and then I am going to provide the source as, because we have the downloaded zip file in this one, so that I am providing to the parameter to the app service deploy, so that it will try to get the zip file from here, and then it will copy into the Azure. Okay, so I'm just clicking on add. So here it is added, right. So maybe we can delete all the other thing also, we don't need all the other things, or otherwise you can delete this one, because currently it is duplicate, because I already added, and then here also we have added. Okay, so we can remove the duplicate, but I'm just showing you how we can add the task, maybe the YAML script from the by using the task itself. You can select whatever one, for example the .NET Core, if I want something, you can just choose the task, and then uh, select it, and then click on add. So which means like here it is added, but the indentation it needs to be correct, right? So that it is not, it is showing some error. Okay, so I think here it is matching like here. Yeah, so now it is fine, right? So here it will do some build actually, but here it is not needed. But I'm just showing you how we can add the YAML pipeline definition itself. But you are clear with that one, right, my bro? So I'm just deleting the unwanted one. So Mebrad, you are clear, right, on the YAML, the pipeline creation?
Yeah. The,
Yeah. So and similar like, right, so for example, this is the one deployment. Okay, this is for the dev environment. So similar like, right, I can just copy the whole thing and then I'm uh, pasting it here. Yeah, I think here the indentation only we need to be very careful on that. So yeah, so here, right, I need to update like QA or something, so that it will create the new QA environment. So the otherwise, right, the steps and all the same, the download artifact, so everything will be same only. Okay, but everything, right, so anyway we are going to make it as the template, and then we are going to down deploy from template, so that yeah, we don't want to duplicate this much of codings and all. So okay, maybe in the subsequent session when we are using the template, we will see how we can reuse it, because otherwise, right, if you have the 4 environment, I need to copy the same download and copy for all the environment. So that's not the good practice, right? So we can make it as the template. We can just refer it wherever we record. But apart from that, we just want to provide the some kind of maybe the parameters alone. Okay. So for example, this one, right? So for example, .NET Core publish and okay, I think yeah, .NET Core publish and dev deployment. Yeah, maybe the other things and all I'm just removing it for now. Uh, okay, so I'm bringing into the current working models. Okay, so for example, here we have the build pipeline. Okay, and then I am provided the dev environment deployment thing here, and here we have the download artifact and then the deployment artifact. So I'm just going to save, and then I'm going to run, so we can see like whether it is deployed or not. Yeah, maybe, and one more thing. So I will maybe in the OneDrive, right? I will update the source code so that you can just try to maybe simulate from your Azure DevOps account so that you will be understood better. Okay, so I will update the source code also, like source code and Azure pipeline for today's session so that you can understood. Maybe you can try it from your end also. Okay, so just I'm updating the pipeline, right? So that it is started the build.
sure. Maybe we can continue tomorrow.
Yeah. So, for example, the pipelines, yeah, I think the currently, right, this one is the dev build is doing. So only the 2 minutes, Mabrod, sorry for that. So because it is deploying, right, so we just know whether it is deploying or not. So that one you would be understood. Okay. Here you
Sure.
can see, right, the build stage and then dev stage. Okay, only the two things. So this one is for the build is happening, and then the once that is completed, the dev deployment will be happening. Okay, I think it will just take 2 minutes as usual. For the build itself, it will take some time, like restoring and building the project, publishing it. But for the dev deployment, maybe the copying, right, it will just take a few minutes only. Yeah, I think this stage, right, this is the web app deployment stage. And once that is completed, and yeah, we can see the output in portal also. So here the successfully deployed. Okay. Yeah, here you can see, right, the last few
Mhm.
seconds. So I think this is the last view. It's not like deployed a few seconds ago something.
Mm,
Yeah. Okay, Mebrot. So I think currently it is deployed, right? I think from this URL we can see whether this is deployed or not. Okay, so this is
mm,
returning a value, so the deployment is successful. Yeah, maybe the rest of the things, right, we can continue on tomorrow session. Okay, so thank you,
sure.
Mebrot.
All right.
Good night.
Thank you. Good. Bye bye.